Welcome back to Thrive While Loving an Addict. I'm KL Wells, your host for today, and I am very, very excited to have with me Pamela Tosh, who is coming to us from Cape Town, South Africa. So we are reaching, around the world in terms of this message of Thrive While Loving an Addict. And she has a really interesting and elevating story that I think you all will really benefit from hearing and being a part of today. So welcome, Pamela.
Thank you very much, KL. I'm very excited to share my story. And I really hope that together we can help your listeners in any way possible, sharing insights, techniques, hard lessons and struggles in the hopes that that ripple effect can help others.
Absolutely. I'm with you. And so I was thinking about this before I got on today, and I thought every meeting with somebody holds the potential for learning something or hearing something that potentially could change the trajectory of your life. And so
Absolutely.
that's my challenge to the listeners today. Listen as if you are going to get a gift through this conversation that potentially will change the trajectory of your life. And so with that, would you please give our listeners a window into kind of your story of origin? How'd you get on this path? Yeah. How'd you get on this path?
Yeah. Well, coming back to what you said about knowledge is power.
Mhm.
And I always had a very close relationship with God, and I was brought up in a Roman Catholic environment. So I was led to church every Sunday, kicking and screaming in most cases when we're young kids. But the heartfelt notion of what it meant to be in a relationship with God was always there for me. And I'll jump from what it was like as a child straight to teens, living in maybe what you would call an abusive environment, but not physically abusive. It was more projections. And it stemmed from a father who was in the Navy, where there was alcohol abuse, and a mother at home trying to look after 3 kids. So it wasn't very easy to discern that as a child.
Yeah.
But there was always something missing. And I was growing up feeling unhappy. That unhappiness was turning into anger and frustration. And at a young age, 14, 15, I was introduced to smoking and alcohol later on. But coming back to what it's like in South Africa, and at that time, nothing was clean. The Mandrax was involved in the smoking. We used to call it buttons there. It was a cheap drug. And we would be smoking with a bottleneck.
Oh, wow.
And it was just fun at that time. So my relationships with my family were very rebellious. I was pulled into situations with guys, was a little bit unbecoming. And I think that my perception of me on my family had a huge effect, because I started being an easy scapegoat for everybody else in the mix of it. And there weren't many lines between what's right for an adult to do and what's right for children. I mean, growing up in the 80s, we weren't really mollycoddled and looked after like children are now. It was free, go wherever you like. It was still safe on the street. I ended up having my daughter at a very young age. I was 23 when I fell pregnant, and my daughter's father unfortunately passed away on a motorbike when I was 2 months pregnant. He was 22, and that was from drinking. And in fact, me getting to know him was through drinking as well.
Sure.
So trying to define the lines between alcohol or smoking abuse and drinking, I just couldn't. Yeah, that was a painful process for me, because I felt like I was playing different roles. Obviously, I didn't know what cognitive dissonance was. I didn't know about avoidant narcissistic behaviors. I'm quite sure I was becoming a narcissist under that environment that was stewing around me. But I always knew what was right and what was wrong. And when we become so codependent, those lines and lies are very hazy. So I always felt I needed to find forgiveness. I was always going to church, to confession, and I
Mhm.
was always reminded of the sin of our spiritual nature. But
Mhm.
then there was the spiritual voice always, and how I was living in my reality. And it was very difficult to balance the two. When I had my daughter and I had a lot of support around me in my family structure, it allowed me almost to see the sins of the past when it came to how I was brought up. You know,
Mm.
when I
Mm.
was being a perfectionist and I was trying to instill certain values on my daughter, and I heard a voice inside me that sounded like my mother when she was upset, or a voice of an adult that, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't
I
right. This is
know.
not,
Yeah.
this is something else. So I think that's a lot of my backstory right there.
Yeah. So I'm curious, did you step away from addiction when you got pregnant?
Absolutely, from smoking and drinking. But then afterwards, now I'm in living with my parents and my daughter's young, and I've got to go out to work and I've got to hold, it was about 3 different jobs I was doing.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to fall back into those addictions again. But
Mhm.
this is South Africa as well. And when we talk about relapsing and what is available in the system here for drug addicts across the board, it's just not enough. And we'll come back to part of what I used
Mm.
to rehabilitate myself shortly. But what I'm seeing right now is people that can afford it on waiting lists going in and out of that system, whether it's
Mhm.
a month or 2 months in rehabilitation, coming out back into their own environment, having to deal with the same issues as before.
Right.
So maybe we're getting the best care whilst we're going through that program, but is it
Mhm.
sustainable is another story. So
Mhm.
I needed to think for myself, how am I going to develop this so that I can continue to be sustainable, increase the spiritual strength that I need? And
Mhm.
obviously, into my older age, I wanted something that was going to generate income for me as well, because to look after yourself is to learn a valuable lesson and to obviously share that with as many people as possible.
Mhm.
I'm unfortunately at the point now where I have gone through yoga teacher training and I specifically want to focus on addictions.
Mhm.
But a lot of our communities, families, and middle class and upwards are still being led down that path of medicine and doctors and psychologists, psychiatrists, and the ADHD and all the other derivatives of our and intellectualizing disorders is really becoming so confusing.
Yeah. And so through your exploration and your training and all of that, where is the trauma piece of this?
Definitely the CPTSD from childhood, whether the abuse was verbal or physical, aimed at me or aimed at my siblings. I
Mhm.
carried that right through into my 20s and then realized that being a mother. But then all the relationship trauma, and I can tell you now at the age of 50, I haven't had a healthy, loving relationship with a man.
Mhm.
PTSD that triggers me in when I'm meeting people
Mhm.
is through the projections and the trauma of all the relationships that have brought me to this point. And when I
Mhm.
went through the yoga journey, unfortunately, I thought I needed to let go of all of that. And in fact, I really needed to incorporate the shadow.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
So I decided to go to India when I was in my late 30s. I wish I had this foundation in my early 20s, just how things work. My daughter will obviously have a better foundation for that now. She's young enough to.
Yeah.
So I had fat on my body, which was all stored emotions. I had toxins in my body from abuse, alcohol and drug, and I was on antidepressants at the time. When I talk about addictions, yes, I'm talking alcohol, drugs, and sexual promiscuity, porn, that sort of thing. But the bigger picture is that we're all addicted to a 3D reality that's not serving us.
Yeah. Yeah. So say more about that.
Everything we eat, the
Mhm.
daily routines, what we told is breakfast, lunch, and supper, what
Mhm.
goes with what. You know, we are trying to be mainstreamed on the gravy train and all in line,
Mhm.
standing in queues, waiting your turn. And COVID was a fantastic example of controlling the masses. And we've also just had a protest in South Africa this past Friday about gender-based violence, which is also a symptom of alcohol and drug abuse in our poor communities. But the
Mhm.
protest, they told thousands and thousands of women across the country to lie down on the ground. And I just
Oh.
think that it's just so counterintuitive to how women are feeling. We're feeling trapped and frustrated in all of this.
Mhm.
Why aren't
Mhm.
we allowed to jump up and down and shake our hands and
Mhm.
be verbal and communicative about all of this?
Mhm.
So talking more about the addictions of our 3D reality, we are in a psychosis and we're listening more to our ego. And in 1994, when the new government came into being in South Africa and Blacks were introduced into the schools, we lost the connection to spirit because certain cultures didn't want to have that assembly, scripture union, faith
Mhm.
based education anymore.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
a lot of our children don't have that faith based. They
Mm.
don't know where to go. They can go to the guidance counselor, but if that person is not speaking Christian authority or praying over that person, they're also not going to have the best advice, I feel. I think
Mhm.
that sustainability needs to incorporate that. Holistic does incorporate that.
Mhm.
But we've
Mhm.
also been told that holistic and esoteric practices are not in alignment with what we need medically and scientifically. So
Right,
we
right.
are continuously juggling ideas. And then
Yeah,
again,
and
the low vibration remaining within
mhm.
our bodies
Mhm.
and the higher vibration emotional chart, which takes us up to love, above
Mhm.
love, authenticity, and then resonating in that blissful state of authenticity. And I've surpassed love. My
Mhm.
5 years of karma yoga during lockdown, helping poor communities and giving and serving and loving had to have an outcome for me
Yeah.
because of burnout that's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Sure. Yeah. So you have a big story, and I'd like to know a little bit more about your first journey to India. And it feels to me like that was an experience of awakening for you. Is that true?
Absolutely, yes. It was a real
Okay.
turning point for me. There were certain poses that we did during our course. Now, bear in mind as well, it was an initial 6 week course, which is the
Mm-hmm.
first 200-hour yoga teacher training that you can do in most places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to go to source. I didn't realize I would be tuning into spirit, but completely different frequency, maybe than anywhere
Mm-hmm.
in the world as well, because of that Shakti energy, the presence of
Mm-hmm.
being in the Himalayas at the
Mm-hmm.
divine source,
Mm-hmm.
located around the Ganga River, and also involved in all the puja prayer ceremonies and everything that happens on a daily basis. Living in India for a day feels like a lifetime. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really immerse in that peace and stillness. And yes, if it is chaotic around you, you practice observation and automatic emotional detachment from everything that's going on around you.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's
Mm.
hold that. Let's put a pin in that one because it very much feels like collectively that's the skilling up that needs to take place because we're
Yes.
in the chaos and the destruction and all of the
Yeah.
uncertainty and
Yeah.
in ways that people have never experienced before. And so I think for me it feels like there's been an escalation in that way to for a kind of creative destruction to take place, and I do believe that addiction has been kind of the really big red flag waving from a soul perspective to not only wake up those who are dealing with the disease, but also to wake up the families that love people dealing with the disease, like parallel recovery, so to speak.
Yeah. Consumerism is a big thing, and one of the Baba ladies in one of the restaurants was likening the holes in the face and the gateways of the body like a vacuum. And it's good to be put off if you can really think and imagine what that might be like. And what's the old Pink Floyd mincemeat marching, that similar idea to just having this hand to mouth the whole time,
Right,
you know.
right.
That
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I really focused on clearing and cleaning my face, doing some Reiki and touch work around these areas. And
Mhm.
then yoga nidra, which is the detaching from the physical body, focusing and being aware of different areas as you're shutting down. And all of these processes are only really to get you in touch with heart and
Mhm.
spirit and soul. Because whatever
Yes,
is
we
going on within is going to
mhm.
manifest out.
Absolutely. And the way that you tell this story and how I hear it is that you had an intuition that was quite strong even as a child. And you were aware of it. And you just couldn't figure out like the disconnect between that awareness and what was going on around you. Would that be safe to say?
Well, at that age, I wasn't going to, my opinions and those opinions of children around that time weren't really heard. And I think even now I'm still struggling with the throat chakra and to open
Hmm.
and be more verbal. But then moving later on into my timeline with the start of the nonprofit organization and really honoring the feminine side of myself, I've become the healer for a community of children, and that's allowed me to
Oh, wow.
open my mouth and speak my truth, and doing a lot more videography with voice over, and then again talking more from a guardian perspective.
Yeah. I can
So
relate to the voice piece, the fifth chakra piece of this also is, I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and we had freedom to roam, but we didn't have any voice in the family. And what I will say, I grew up, my dad was an Episcopal minister, and he was a wonderful man. However, there was a big gap in terms of what was happening in my family too. So intuitively, I knew that there was a different way to be doing this thing called life as a kid, and it's been a lifelong journey. Obviously, I think that's really what this is all about, is it is a lifelong journey of discovery and peeling back the layers that cover us up and keep us in a darker space and don't serve us and so on and so forth. And so what I'm curious about is, was the Reiki and the yoga experience going to India, did you feel like you were unlayering?
like onions,
Mhm,
lots of
mhm,
onion layers coming off. So
mhm,
as we were put into different positions, especially
mhm,
the hero pose, where you're sitting with your legs under your body, your feet are behind you, and you're pushing yourself down, whatever tension was trapped in the ankles, the feet, and the hip
mhm,
caused a lot of triggering and tears. Many of
mhm.
us were crying through the process. Even trying to be
Right.
upside down on my head with support was,
Mm,
yeah, quite painful, and moved a lot of trapped stuff in the body
mhm,
through
mhm,
breath work. I was unlike anybody else at the time, though. In 2013, June, July, we were doing this course through monsoon season. So it was very hot, very sticky. Floods came, and it was
mm,
the worst floods that India had had in 88 years. And
mhm,
I had gone there specifically with a little kit, a foot care kit, because I had started doing foot care and therapies in retirement homes and healthcare centers here in the
mm,
Western Cape. So I was activated into service. And then I started learning a lot more about karma yoga and
yeah,
meditation in action,
yeah,
and the work that I had done in retirement homes, the detachment and the ability to sit for long periods of time and in service, touching feet, being very mindful and focused on the individual. I didn't realize that there was an exchange of energy happening
mm,
even down here. But that
yeah,
kind of fell into place when I was there. I had a big heart opening. I was
mhm,
serving on the streets. I was interacting and touching people from weird and wonderful cultures that I didn't know. I was also
Mhm.
a bit naive because I thought every Indian in India is spiritual and does yoga, and that's definitely not the case.
Right, right. Yes, very much so.
So I was surprising people when they were seeing this white lady in the street looking very kind of asexual, non-threatening. I'd shaved the hair on both sides. I was wearing white, and I was just loving that interaction. It
Mhm.
was very, very healing for my soul. And when I
Mhm.
left after 6 weeks, for the following year after that, back in Cape Town, I had this pull on my sternum and a lot of internal work happening during that time.
Right, right, right. And so how do you describe your kind of it doesn't I'm going to say formula for thriving? That's the best language I can think of in the moment. Because at this point you've done so many experiences and so many things. You're very clear about service as a way to heal and so on and so forth. But on a daily regimen, as a daily
To
regimen,
try to try and stick to that routine, that schedule
mm-hmm,
as much as possible.
mm-hmm,
Because what does it mean to be human? And what does our system need to function? And we do know
right.
the recipe already. We do know we need to be outside. We need X amount of sun, vitamins in the foods. At the moment, I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock and I'm waking up at 5, 5:30, because I want the early morning routine.
I love early morning.
Does so much better for our bodies. Less screen time, as little alcohol as possible, if nothing right
Mm-hmm,
now, and discerning who I'm going to be around, because the relationships, even up to 3 months ago, have been extremely toxic. And I think I did tell you as well, I'm coming out of a narcissistic abusive relationship. The
mm-hmm,
best recipe for me, or the best technique, is really telling the truth,
mm,
because for me to be authentic is truth telling.
right, right,
And I've transmuted a lot of energy by telling stories. And it's not frivolous stuff going
right.
into the locations where I am, but I'm
Mm-hmm,
observing their natures and I'm seeing what is the right model to be used.
mm-hmm,
Because everybody wants to put the drug addicts and the alcoholics into one
mm-hmm,
pot, and we all
mm-hmm.
go into group meetings and we all go through this program together. It's
Mhm,
great to have that support, but nine
mhm,
times out of 10, when you come out of that, you might still be alone. And I've been through aloneness and loneliness in all its forms, especially when I was serving on the streets. And even now, when I know I need to shift timelines, which means I need to push the boundaries out and make space for new.
yeah,
Withdrawal of senses. Something that I wanted to mention was with the withdrawal of senses as well, when we're talking about the senses and how they relate to the parts of the face, and the eyes for seeing and ears for hearing, taste, smell, and what we choose to come into contact with and
mhm,
consume. So withdrawal of senses is quite necessary. We have to understand that it's our senses that perceive to the brain, and the brain or the mind is giving off these multiple millions of different scenarios of options
mhm,
and choices, discerning decisions, whatever you want to call it, fast. Just say
mhm,
no to everything, because it might not be the drug. It might be a symptom of something else. As long as you can bring the spirit self through past the physicalities, past
mhm.
what's going in through the senses, and understand that the attachments are there through the senses, then I feel that we have the ability to connect with spirit, have a relationship with spirit, and become stronger in our faith to push
Yeah,
us forward.
yeah. Well, and the way that I hear what you're saying and also think about what you're saying is that detachment from the experiences that we have had so that we can pattern interrupt our patterns of thinking, our patterns of behavior, our patterns of feeling that don't serve us, and
Yeah.
actually be in a place of being able to choose and then rewrite the script.
And give yourself lots of options of choice,
Mhm.
because a lot of people just don't know. Okay, if I'm not going to
Mhm.
have that, what am I filling it with? We
Mhm.
need stimulation,
Mhm.
and we've got to be as busy as we can be every day for as long as possible in our lives. I'm
Right.
hoping that my yoga teacher training and all of those skills that I'm learning, I'm going to be teaching yoga until I'm 95, 100 if I'm lucky. And that's that. So, what can you do in your life that can give you that life skill?
So I reference a book that I read in the 1990s called the Paradigm Conspiracy, and it's the comparative contrast of the power over and control paradigm, which we're very deep in right now, culturally and globally, and the soul honoring paradigm, which is what we're really speaking about today. Is we're pulling back all the layers as best we can to be able to get back to soul,
Yes.
spirit, our own, and connected to source, however you define that. And
And our soul and spirit are speaking exactly the same language as
mhm,
well. Doesn't matter
mhm,
who you are. Doesn't
mhm,
matter if you're the murderer on death row or the
mhm,
sweetest old lady sitting on the first pew in church. Our
mhm.
souls and our spirits are the same.
I would totally agree with you on that. I want to come back to what you said in terms of in South Africa, people are going into quote rehabs, people that can afford it for a month or 2 months or whatever along those lines. And I think what's really been fortunate, in partly in the United States, is that my son was able to go into a program, the final program that he came out of and has stayed clean and sober. That was a year-long program
Wow.
because it was about him being clean and sober for an extended period of time for his brain to begin to heal, but also
Yes.
rewiring the patterns that he had created as somebody using, and to surround himself with a healthy, healing community. So it's a transformative experience. And you
Mm,
just
mm.
can't go through 30 days or 60 days and then step back into the life you were surrounded with before, because you just go back to the same pattern. And so it's really quite an extraordinarily courageous journey to reinvent your life.
Absolutely. And at some point, I was doing it every year. The years that I could go back to India, even if it was just for a short visit. Yeah. It kept me, as we spoke a little bit about these vision quests, that February month was the most significant month for me to do that.
Mm,
And that was also in alignment with one of the Indian festivals called Navratri, where they devote 9 days to the very different versions of Durga. Now, also, as women, we get very different kind of messages, for
mhm,
ourselves that also come through for our intuition. And maybe we are a bit more intuitive and sensory than our
mhm.
counterparts. If a man is addicted for 10 to 5 to 10 years or however long it is, they say it should take just as long for them to rehabilitate. You can't do something different for a couple of months and think, I'm going to be
I'm
fixed.
good. Right.
But I feel that women have more resilience in terms of that time frame. And so if I did these vision quests or kind of annual visits and reset myself, I would
Mhm,
come back to Cape Town just ready, fired up to start again and knocked down. But I never stopped speaking my truth to the people that I came into contact with and the relationships that I've had, and especially the intimate relationships that I've had. If you're going to rub me up the wrong way, or you're going to say something that undermines my character or violates what I'm offering you in this relationship, you're going to hear it from me. And
mhm,
that is also where the conflict started to come in,
mhm,
because I think we're all deserving of truth, which we don't often get in relationships. And when you have, or you think you know somebody, but behind the scenes there are codependent attachments, it turns out into an absolute disaster. So it's unfortunate that you can't always give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Oh, for
You know,
sure.
we
Yeah.
we can't just go out like we used to in the 80s and 90s and meet the person of our dreams and think that this is going to be the one we're going to marry. You've got to
Mhm,
put
mhm.
enough space between you, get out the questionnaire, check all the red flags, make sure they've
Yeah.
got a healthy family connections. And so where is the humanness gone? Where is our integrity gone? why are we being so distracted by music, certain
Mhm.
types of music, certain
Mhm.
types of environments, and that habitual being pulled back into temptation and bad habits. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I can relate with you on the relationship piece because I didn't witness or experience my parents having a healthy relationship or my grandparents having a healthy relationship. And so I was kind of left to, okay, well, what does that actually look like, sound like, and feel like? And it took me many years of trial and error with an eye towards, I was kind of determined I didn't want to leave this planet without having created a healthy, authentic, life-giving relationship. And that was many trials and errors, but every time I did that, I think it's a little bit like recovery. Is you just keep elevating, but you kind of fall down the other side, and then you come
Yeah.
back up, and then but you keep elevating. and
Few
and
steps
so
forward, one.
yeah. And so, but that takes intentionality in life and a focus of what you really do want to create for yourself. And so, when talking about like who we surround ourselves with is who we become, like I moved 9 times in the course of my adult life. And every time I was telling somebody yesterday, every time I reinvented myself because I could, because
Mm.
nobody knew me there. And so I think the way that we're talking about this is I felt like, okay, I took those layers off. And then I took those layers off. And then, I took those layers off. And so I gave myself permission to make the moves to reinvent.
Yes, and endurance is how I've had to face life. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
there is a big difference between the rand and the dollar exchange. There's obviously such big limitations for a white single female here in South Africa because
Right.
of all the new laws. So, me going the next step in registering my nonprofit organization and then my PTY last year were quite big issues for me to do alone, especially.
Yeah.
I've just always had this, I don't want to do alone. I need help. I have to have somebody next to me holding my hand. And that changed. It developed when I started serving and doing karma yoga to I really want to guide people into the space with me and have us walk this amazing, beautiful path together because
Mhm.
now I really see the truth and I'm able to live in truth and it's so much more freeing.
Mhm.
But so many people are not ready to receive. And it really is just a simple process of stepping out in faith. But faith based living in South Africa is fearful for a lot of people because of the
Right.
lack mentality and the need for money and a job.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So very little creativity and incentives to create your own thing within the schooling and the tertiary institutions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how I hear this is what you're doing is an incredibly courageous act within the institutions and the culture of power over and control of. And so your experience is quite different than my experience for sure. At the same time, it's just our experience in the United States has looked just different expressions over of power over and control of. And I am incredibly aware of my white privilege in the United States, even as a woman. And so those of us who choose this path are doing so from a conscious place and aware of sometimes our soloness.
So important for me to continue to resonate in this divine feminine energy and for that to be witnessed by the people in these poor communities because they don't have a mother figure or maybe they don't have a mentor at all. During lockdown, I addressed a lot of different issues from sores on the children to the sale of alcohol and drugs by women and men in this very small community, but it's a spatial issue. There are about 400 people living on a piece of ground, maybe a quarter or less size of a rugby field.
Yeah.
And so it's filthy, it's toxic. I was coming out with a lot of articles online and also in print and some radio interviews, all talking about this dynamic of these communities and the sale of alcohol and drugs inside these places, but still not having any like proper organizational or governmental representation. I
Mm-hmm.
was, misrepresented in print. I was called a care worker, which I'm not. Maybe I don't really want to be called a yoga teacher as well. I enjoy the title energy healer, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not ready for that level of esoteric spirituality here, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure anyway. But we have to recognize the fact that we are definitely spiritual beings and we are
Mm-hmm.
in the mix of all the spiritual conflict. So I'm also fighting against mainstream red tape rules and regulations and procedures, against city policies and what I want to do, which is
Mm-hmm.
not from an it's not from an
Mm-hmm.
ego place, because I've been attuned to a love vibration. I'm not going to try and do anything to harm anybody. But even that kindness that some people will misconstrue as weakness will then still get projected back onto me as I'm trying to take advantage of something,
Sure.
or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being recognized for my authenticity. So I'm on eggshells and still wondering from time to time how I'm really going to get in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we had a base here in Cape Town, or like an ashram environment where I could
Mm-hmm.
start with these models and do a 200-hour yoga teacher training with the buy-in of a doctor and maybe someone who teaches about anatomy and all these other things that has to be put into this program, and
Mm-hmm.
having a social welfare worker on board. It would mean isolating this group for 2 months out of town and then going through the daily routine and schedules for 6 weeks. For a person at the end of that program to receive a certificate and they can walk into a potential job or travel and use that certification, they've got the life skills and they've got the possibility of helping others with that certification.
Yeah.
Very
And
little
so,
time,
yeah, is that
relax.
the dream?
Yeah, most definitely. I'd love to take community members to India and have
Mm-hmm.
them, at the source and learn more about eco-village and sustainability and truly because if they've never seen anything different,
Mm-hmm.
they will think that their shelter or their shack structure is the best that they could be. But I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen how working with little in India has the best potential for creativity. So, I mean, I walk into the township and it stinks and the dogs are drinking dirty water, but I can see where we could grow hydroponics or wall gardens, and
Mm-hmm.
how we could cover spaces for catchment, so we could get more drinking water and I do not understand why our city isn't fulfilling those roles. They're keeping those people stuck in codependent, toxic behaviors.
Right. Right. Well, I think how I think about the times that we're in the West is that people sick and poor and uneducated, you can control them.
I've
And
had a few people approach me because of our municipal elections over the years. So we've obviously got 4 years between cycles. So next year is the next cycle. 2022 was the first one, where I had different political parties approaching me and wanting me to run for ward councillor. And I just can't compromise on my own standards and what my nonprofit means within that
hmm
district,
hmm
because I think I'd just be chopping off the resources if I did that.
yeah. Well, and so we're kind of coming towards the end of this conversation, but I mean, this is super rich, and we all have this calling to impact and serve. And how we exercise that within the constraints of where we live and all of the things is, I think this is partly the work of the resiliency, the determination, the continuing to walk your uniquely divine path like I am doing mine, despite what is challenging us, despite what's surrounding us, despite what people are saying or projecting on us. And so that's why I come back to the thriving piece is, how do we thrive in the midst of walking this path and handling all the things that are coming at us to keep us in line with what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to act and all of that stuff.
So, living a divine life, and you've got to find things that resonate with you. This book, I was introduced to this book 2016, The Song of God. And
Hmm.
it's the different verses of the Bhagavad Gita, but then it's also giving you the daily readings. And if you're not a Bible reader, this is another great alternative because it
Right.
really makes the words digestible and practical. And it's just so important for us to know thyself and
Hmm.
act within that, not over and above or excessive, but within the confines of knowing thyself, honoring and trusting thyself so you can speak truth, so you
Hmm.
can be responsible.
Hmm.
Responsibility is a big word as well. I've got to be accountable for myself to be responsible for myself.
Right. Right. Hmm.
And I can thrive through that example.
So, as we wrap this up, what are one or two things that you think about on a daily basis that keeps you on this path?
That I'm definitely not alone. We are not.
Mm.
We can tap into the
Mhm.
resources
Mhm.
anytime. Also, knowing, if you believe in them, the spirit guides, the
Mhm.
ancestors. We must understand that we've lived lifetimes, or at least the soul keeps regenerating back into the vessel. And
Mhm.
that's exciting because
Mhm.
maybe this isn't the only time that we get to redeem ourselves. But we also have to understand that everything negative, everything low vibrational is just not of us. I feel like a superhero every day to
Mm.
thrive. I need to feel
Mhm.
like I've got my cape on and I'm going to go and heal the world one step at a time. But
Mhm.
it's exciting for me. I liken that excitement to the golden buzzer moment at AGT when the judges are all sitting there watching a show and
Right.
someone does amazingly well. They've told a fabulous story and the button gets pressed and you check all that glitter coming out from
Right. Right.
above the stage. My
Yeah.
hair stands on end when I get
Mhm.
excited like that. And we need to
Mhm.
feel that constant excitement. That light energy is so
Mhm.
healing for every cell in the body.
I love that. I love the golden buzzer. Huh. And those moments are when you hear somebody sing or do something extraordinary are like almost unearthly. Like it takes you to another place
Mm.
that is so connected. And those kind of wow moments of wow, wasn't that incredible? Wasn't that awe-inspiring? Wasn't that like almost transformative? And we have those opportunities every single day as we show up in the world. And what I would say is, I'm getting ready to go into 4 or 5 days just by myself so that I can restore and recharge to be able to do the work that I do in the world. And taking care of yourselves, hear this audience, is so mission critical to being able
Yeah.
to rise every day and do the best version of you.
Please don't compare and judge yourself to
Mm-mm,
anybody else.
mm-mm.
We are uniquely different. As many people as there are on this planet, we are uniquely different.
Right.
And I appreciate because we're learning from each other here as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And just we can look at each other like we're a different version of ourselves. And there is that oneness there, as I described in the beginning, that soul resonant. But there's no one on this earth like me. So don't try and be like me either.
Right. Exactly. 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 So, if anybody in the audience wants to reach out to you, get a hold of you, learn more about what you're up to, how would they reach you?
So my yoga name is Indie Pam, my full name, Pamela Tosh. You can Google that. You'll come across my website, indiepam.org, or on my Facebook and Instagram.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful that you reached out to make this happen and that we actually have the technology to be able to have a conversation while you're in Cape Town and I'm in Eugene, Oregon. I just think this
Fantastic.
is extraordinary. And for me, it feels like the webs of connection across continents. And this is what it's going to take for the shift to take place so that we are healthy and whole.
We're tightening the grids and the energetic lines across the planet. And I think women's ascension has to lead the men. So, all you women out there, let's join.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So, again, thank you so much for taking the time at the end of your day, at the beginning of my day, to have this conversation. And for those that have had the privilege and honor of listening to this, take something from this that will change the trajectory of how you step into your life every single day. So, thriving for all. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.